I called for the rain in anger and pain. I scratched terrible runes in the dust. I called to the moon, the gull and the loon. Now everything's mud, mold, and rust. My hay that was stunted is tall and uncut. The pasture is getting ahead. There are mushrooms galore in the gloom of my yard, fairy rings, yellow and red. There are big croaking frogs that splash in the stream that I cynically still call my lane, and the thunder gods dance given any good chance it's drizzle or downpour, then rain. The haybine is hooked and it squats in the yard. I've overhauled everything twice. I know we need rain as we also need sun, but a bit of dispersal would be nice. It's been 2 weeks of wet after 1 month of drought. I take the joke good as I can, but I find myself shouting as new clouds roll up. Come down and fight like a man. I took a guy one time speckle fishing.
Yeah.
And he knew all about fishing, he did.
Yeah.
So I took him, I thought he doesn't know shit about fishing. Hey, people will just look at you and just lie.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I took him up to the bridge at the Whiskey Lake Bridge, just past Bull Lake.
Mm.
I said, here, we'll try here. And that, I just meant we'd just try there. I had the canoe on the top, eh? Yeah. I thought we could put the canoe in and go up and down from there. So he goes over under the bridge. He says, this looks like a good spot. And I said, by God, it does look like a good spot. And he casts out, and right away I see he catches a fish hook or something. Little speck, I think. I said, what'd you catch? He said, a little speck. Yeah. And I see he puts it in whatever he had to put it in there.
Yeah.
And he said, got another one. Charlie, come on over, try over here.
Yeah.
So I goes over and I don't even get to him really. I cast out, bing, I catch one and I bring it in and I look and it's a chub.
Yeah.
What I've got is a chub about this long. I says, this is a chub.
Throwing them back in those guys.
I said, yeah. He said, this is a chub. And I went to throw it. He says, no, that's a speck. I said, it's not a speck.
Yeah.
I says, look. And I walked up. I says, it's a chub. He says, put it in the bag. I said, that's not a speckle.
Yeah.
He caught about 20 chubs.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't believe me they weren't specks. He took them home, he cleaned them, and we ate them. Yeah. They were all right. Mm. My first poem was about a deer, and I was about maybe 6 or 7 or 8. I was pretty young. Huh. My family all write poetry. My sister writes poetry, my mother wrote poetry, my daughter writes poetry, my grandfather wrote poetry. That whole gene pool, all them Scotsmen, they all wrote poetry. Every one of them. Probably if we could go back to Scotland and find out where them Hamiltons came from, we'd find people that wrote poetry. I guess you always write poems because you have to in some kind of a way. There. Enough damn salad for you? There you go. Happy camper. I don't know, she bought me a book called 101 Famous Poems. And another one called American Ballads. A lot of them ones George does was in that American Ballads. Also in that 101 American Poems. And maybe that had an effect on me, I don't know. I remember learning The Highwayman, eh?
Oh, The Highwayman.
Yeah, and the cremation of Sam McGee and the shooting of Dan McGrew. And that was a time that I learned a few poems, eh? And I don't know that it's a big step from learning poems to writing them. Poems. George is a man that knows poems.
I forgot all them.
Come on, George.
I forgot all them poems. 'Twas in the bleary middle of the hard-boiled Arctic night. I was lonesome as a loon, so you can imagine my amazement and discomfort and delight when I bumped into that missionary man. He was lying lost and dying in the moon's unholy leer, and frozen from his toes to fingertips. The famished wolf pack ringed him, but he didn't seem to care as he pressed his icebound
Bible to his lips. 'Twas the
limit
of my trap line,
with
the cabin
miles away.
and every step was like a stab of pain. But I packed him like a baby, and I nursed him night and day, till I brought him back to health and strength again. So there we were, benighted in the shadow of the pole, and he might have proved a priceless little pard, if he hadn't got to worrying about my blessed soul, and quote me his Bible here by the yard. For there was I, a husky guy whose God was nicotine, with a cigarette a fixture in my mouth. mug. I rolled them in the pages of a pulpit magazine and hacked them with my jackknife. And the plug, tobacco. Grow to know the bliss and glow the good tobacco means. Just live among the everlasting ice. So judge my horror when I found my magazines, which I used to roll the cigarettes out up here, was chewed into a chowder by the mice. Disaster, no more paper to make a cigarette, stuck in the cabin miles and anywhere in the middle of winter with a crazy preacher. Whoa! Disaster. Oh, a woeful week went by and not a single pill I had. Me that would smoke my 20, 30 in a day. I sighed, I swore, I stroked the floor, I thought I would go mad. The preacher here watched me in dismay. My brow was wet, my teeth was set, my nerves was rasping raw. And yet that preacher couldn't understand. So with despair I wrestled there when suddenly I saw the Bible he was holding in his hand. Good paper in the Bible, boys. Roll a good cigarette out of a page in the Bible, huh? And something snapped inside my brain, and with an evil start, the wolf man in me woke to rabid rage. I saved you a lousy life, says I, so show you have a heart here, and tear me out a solitary page of the Bible so I can roll up one measly cigarette. He shrank and shriveled at my words, his face went pewter white. 'Twas just as if I'd handed him a blow, and then he seemed to swell and grow to heaven's height, and with a voice that rang he answered, "No!" I grabbed my loaded rifle, and I jabbed it to his chest. "Come on, you little shrimp, give up that book, says I. Well, mister, he may have been a preacher, but he stacked up with the best, and for guts I got handed to the guy. "If I should let you desecrate his holy word," he said, you know the way them preachers talk, "my soul would be eternally accursed. So go on, Bill, I'm ready. You can pump me full of lead and take it, but you got to kill me first." Wow, what a bloody dilemma, eh? What would you do in a case like that, Frank? Pump a couple into him or what, huh? No, I ain't no murderer, I ain't no foul assassin, though I'm full of sinful ways. And I knew right there the fellow had me beat. I felt a yellow mongrel in the glory of his gaze, and I flung my foolish rifle at his feet. Then wearily I turned away and dropped upon my bunk. And there I lay and blubbered like a kid. "Forgive me, pard," says I at last, for acting like a skunk, "but I'd the blasted rifle," which he did. And he also hid his Bible, which is maybe just as well, for the sight of all that paper gave me pain. And there were crimson moments when I thought I'd go to hell just to have a single cigarette again. So there I lay day after day, and brooded dark and deep, until one day I thought I'd end it all. Yep, suicide. So rough I roused the preacher where he lay pretending sleep, with his face of horror turned toward the wall. "See here, my pious pal," says I, "I've stood it long enough. Behold, I mix some deadly poison here in the drink. Enough to kill a dozen men, believe me, it's no bluff. Now watch me, 'cause I'm going to drink it up. You've seen me bludgeoned by despair through bitter days and nights, and now you'll see me squirming as I die. You're not to blame. You played the game according to your lights, but you're a preacher. How would Christ have played it? How would Christ have played it?" Good question, eh, boys? Well, goodbye. With that I raised the deadly drink and laid it to my lips. But he was on me with a tiger bound, and as we rocked and reeled and rocked with wild and wicked grips, the poison cup went crashing to the ground. "Don't do it, Bill," he madly shrieked. "Maybe I acted wrong. See, here's my Bible. Use it as you will. Just promise me you'll read a little here as you go along. You do? Then take it, brother. Smoke your fill." So I did. Yep, I smoked and smoked and smoked and smoked from Genesis to Job. And as I smoked, I read each blessed word, while in the shadow of his bunk I heard him sigh and sob. Then, boys, the most peculiar thing occurred. I started reading more and more, and smoking less and less, until I quit, until the day his heart was almost broke. "Here, take it back," says I. "I've had enough, I guess. Your Bible makes a mighty rotten smoke." So then and there with plea and prayer he pleaded for my soul. And I was racked and ravaged by regrets. But God was good, for though next day there came the police patrol with paper for 1,000 cigarettes. So now I'm called Salvation Bill. I preach the living law and ballyhoo the Bible with the best. And if a guy won't listen, why, I sock him on the jaw and preach the gospel sitting on his chest. Thank you, Robert Service. That's a good one, I like that.
The bobolink sits in the gnarled lilac tree and claims to the world this is his. From the big shingle house to the pole by the drive, and I guess if he claims it, it is. If he proclaims it in story and song and fights in the air if he must, and wakes up the farmer still sleeping at 6, sings like he's ready to bust. The tomcat is hunched and he sits by the queen, he's no time to think on the bird, and the bulls in the barnyard to hide from the flies, I'm doubting that he's even heard. The yard dog lies high on the cool concrete step, he can see all his world with one eye, and all of us hold what we can in the time we hold or we're willing to try. We all share this range at this moment of time when June comes up tawny and red, but only the bobolink does it so proud. It sings like he's waking the dead.
Beautiful. Ain't it the truth?
A lot of bottom feeders are real good eating.
Yeah.
Rhonda's mother used to do up the suckers when they run in the spring. They taste just like salmon, maybe better than salmon.
Yeah.
Because they weren't dying like
Yeah,
salmon.
yeah. There used to be suckers in here. The bears would come down and feed off them in the spring. That was one of their main bloody sources of food. After they come out of hibernation, one of the first things they got was suckers. But they don't see them here anymore.
They don't run in here at all?
No, they used to.
Oh, suckers must run in there.
Well, they can't get by the dams here. I'm telling you. Up again.
A bunch of the boys were hooping it up
Yeah.
in a Malamute saloon. The kid that handled the music box was hitting the jag time tune, and back at the bar, in a solo game, sat Dangerous Dan McGrew. All over his shoulder watching us.
I'm watching it, look.
Was a lady that's known as Lou.
Yeah, it was
Take
the
it,
light
George.
of love. The lady that's known as Lou. When out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner fresh from the cricks, dog dirty and loaded for bear. He looked like a man with a foot in the grave, with scarcely the strength of a louse. Yet he tumbled a poker gold dust on the bar, and he called for drinks for the house. There was none of us could place the stranger's face, Frank, though we searched ourselves for a clue. But we drank his health, and the last to drink was Dangerous Dan McGrew. Well, mister, there's men whose eyes just grip your eyes and hold them hard like a spell. And such was he, and he looked to me like a man who had lived through hell, with his face most air and the dreary stare of a dog whose day is done, as he watered the green stuff into his glass, and the drops fell one by one.
And a set.
Then I got to figuring who he was. I wondered what he'd do. Then I turned my head, and there watching him was Dangerous Dan McGrew. Well, sir, the stranger, his eyes went rubbering around the room. He seemed in a kind of a daze, till at last, why, the old piano here fell in the way of his wandering gaze. The ragtime kid was having to drink. There was no one else on the stool. So the stranger, he stumbles across the room, and he flops down there at the piano like a fool. In his buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then his talon hands, they clutched the keys. My God, but that man could play. Were you ever out in the great alone when the moon looked awful near, and the icy mountains hemmed you in with a silence you almost could hear, with only the howl of a timber wolf as you camped there out in the cold, half dead thing in a dead stark world, clean mad for the muck cold gold, while I overhead, green, yellow and red, the north lights swept in bars. Then you've a hunch what the music meant, Charlie. Hunger and night and the stars. But not the hunger or the belly kind, the Spanish with bacon and beans, but the gnawing hunger of a lonely man for a home and all that it means, for a place that's far from the cares that are, four walls and a roof above, and oh so crammed full of cosy joy, and crowned with a woman's love. Why, a woman as true as all the world, as true as heaven is true. Oh, how ghastly she looks through her rouge, the lady that's known as Lou. Used to be the prospector's wife.
Oh, we
The
didn't
dangerous Dan McGrew stole her, eh? And all at once the music changed, so soft that you scarce could hear, till you felt that your life had been looted clean of all that it once held dear. That someone had stolen the woman you loved, that her love was the devil's lie, that your guts was gone, a thing to do was to crawl away and die. The crowning cry of a heart's despair, and it thrilled you through and through.
I think I'll make it a spread misere.
I guess I'll make it a spread misere, said Dangerous Dan McGrew. Well, sir, the music almost died away. Then it burst like a pent-up flood, and it seemed to say, repay, repay, and my eyes were red with blood. Then the thought came back of an ancient wrong, and it stung like a frozen lash. And the lust arose to kill, then the music stopped with a crash. Then the stranger turned, and his eyes they burned in a most peculiar way. In his buckskin shirt that was glazed with dirt, he sat, and I saw him sway. Then his lips went in a kind of a grin, and his voice, and he spoke, and his voice was calm. And boys, says he, though you don't know me, and none of you care a damn, I'm here to state, and my words are straight, and I'll bet my poke they're true. The one of you here is a hound of hell, and that man is Dan McGrew. Well, a woman screamed, and the lights went out. 2 guns blazed in the dark. Then a woman screamed, and the lights came up. 2 men lay stiff and stark. Pitched on his head and pumped full of lead lay Dangerous Dan McGrew, while the man from the cricks lay clutched to the chest of the lady that's known as Lou. Now, folks, these are the simple facts of the case. I guess I ought to know. Some say that the stranger was crazed with hooch. Oh, I'm not denying it so. I'm not so wise as them lawyer guys, but strictly frank, between us two, the woman who kissed him and pinched his poke of gold dust was the lady that's known as Lou. Thank you. That's a beauty, eh? He was a fucking mastermind, Robert Service.
You know what's good about that is he doesn't tell you the whole thing.
No.
He doesn't tell you that he lets you figure it out.
Yeah.